good week. But it's my real pleasure to be here with y'all today. I want to thank y'all. This is the first week back, like official. Everybody's back on campus, first time, okay? Everybody had a good summer? All right, we ready for classes? Okay, all right, I get it. My name's Andrew Gillum. I have the real pleasure of being the mayor of Florida's capital city, Tallahassee, Florida, and to also be running as one of the Democratic candidates for governor of the state of Florida. Yeah, you can give it up for the state of Florida. But I'm also really honored to be here with y'all. I made it out for a little while out to the bull market. I don't know how many of y'all may have been out there moving around today, but we had a good time in the heat, and then went in and grabbed a little bit of food. First of all, I want to thank y'all for being a part of this organization. How many of y'all, this is your first time to Young Democrats? First time. Wow. Is that because you're freshmen? Or no? Some people have been politicized, I'm guessing in the course of what we've been experiencing as a country. I don't know about y'all, but I have certainly, this past week, in fact, this past 2 weeks, the president has taken us all on a roller coaster. And I usually enjoy roller coasters. But this has been more than a trip. But it makes the work that y'all are doing as a part of this organization all that much more important. So my first ask to you, and the first ask should be one that would be beneficial to our campaign directly, but the first ask really is that I need you to stay involved in Young Democrats on this campus, on college Democrats, involved with the local Democratic Party to the extent that y'all get involved. Involved with, if you will, your Young Democrats organization, because, and by the way, while I want you to be Democrats and involved in the Democratic Party, if you should choose to join Indivisible or the Women's March movement or any of those groups that quite frankly are activating in the aftermath of what we're all experiencing collectively as a country. And I would even say more than that, collectively as a world. The President of the United States, the position is one of the most important that exists on earth. That's not a pejorative, it's just the way things are. And what we need is to make sure that we frankly remind the rest of the world that we haven't lost our senses, that we remind each other that we haven't lost our senses, and that quite frankly that we as a country and we as a state, we're going to persist through this. I like to remind people that before we had Donald Trump in the White House, quite frankly, Florida had our own version of him. He's known as Rick Scott, the governor of this state. Some of y'all will remember that Rick Scott as governor came in basically saying that he's not a scientist and therefore can't say whether or not global warming is real, right? Now, none of y'all need to be reminded that the man ain't a scientist. We know that. But he's used it, quite frankly, as an opportunity to step back from one of the most existential threats that face this state. All the while, in my opinion, had he chosen to lean into the challenge of sea level rise, which is real, I don't know if you know it or not, I hope you know it, but if you deny it, just check out Miami Beach on a non-rain day, where they're closing down streets because of high tide. Last time I checked, high tide was a natural occurrence, right? We've got guacamole content algae blooms flowing out of the east and the west side of this state because of the dereliction of responsibility when it's come to environmental protection here in the state of Florida. We've got a governor who calls himself the jobs governor. Yet, we know that almost half the people in this state say that they can't make ends meet at the end of the month. Many folks are working 2 and 3 jobs just to try to make it. Well, guess what, y'all? I have a different vision and a different future for the Florida that I want y'all to inherit, right? Because I grew up in this state. I'm from this state. I grew up in Miami-Dade, a little area called Richmond Heights. I don't know if there are any South Floridians in the house, but I know we're all, Tampa Bayans and all that stuff now. But for those of y'all who know a little bit about South Florida, growing up in South Florida, I was born to my mother who was growing up a school bus driver. That's right, shout out to bus drivers. Be nice to them. If y'all ride any of these buses, we watching. And my daddy, who growing up worked in construction, he was a construction worker. I'm one of 7 kids. I know it's a lot. People don't do that much these days. But 7 kids, all boys and 1 girl, my baby sister, who actually just finished her work after 7-year stint with the Southern Poverty Law Center and has moved to New York to begin her legal career, her university. She's just entered law school. But during that time, she stood every day at the intersection of the criminal justice system in this state and what it does to people. The fact that in this state, it seems, rather in this nation, you cannot be charged twice for the same crime, right? It's called double jeopardy. But it seems like you can be punished forever for making a mistake. And if we mean what we say, that people ought to be able to pull themselves up by the bootstrap and make a good way for themselves, then why do we keep erecting barriers that prevent people from doing just that? In the city of Tallahassee, where I led on an issue called Ban the Box. We don't ask about your criminal background history unless answering yes to a criminal background history is a disqualifier for the job. If it isn't a disqualifier, we're going to judge you by your merit. Are you qualified? Are you skilled? Can you do the work? Will you make a good employee? Those are the assessments that we get to make. Also as mayor, because I want you to know that I didn't just show up today. I've been leading now in this state and in my community for nearly 15 years as an elected official. I ran when I was about your age. I was 23 years old on the campus of Florida A&M University. Shout out to your sister state institution, FAMU, my alma mater. And I'll tell you, when I decided that I was going to run for the city commission in Tallahassee, nobody thought we had a chance of winning. I mean, nobody. My mama's contribution was $20, and she told me not to spend it all in one place. Right? Nobody thought we were going to do this thing. But we went to work, right? It was a 7-way race, but we knocked on doors and we talked to people, and I shared with them my vision for the community that I called home, Tallahassee. And people said, young people don't vote. Y'all ever heard that before? Right? We don't care. You know, we're too busy on social media, Snapchat, you know, whatever it is that we do. It wasn't Snapchat then because we didn't have it. Right? It's a new technology. But whatever it was, right? They credit us with not having any real civic responsibility, no commitment. Even now, as I stand on this campus, people want to know, why are you going to students? Well, because I know something very important about students. We show up when we feel like it, and we feel motivated, we feel engaged, and people come to us and ask us for our votes. Don't take me for granted. Don't give me the milquetoast version of your platform and who you are and your very unimpressive record and resume and expect that that's going to motivate me to come out and be for you. Show me what you've done. Don't just tell me. And that's one of the reasons why I want you all to know me and to know me better. Because I've been on the front lines of many of the battles that I hope you care about. I know I care deeply about them. When marriage equality was won across this country, and we had county after county saying that they would no longer issue marriage licenses to anyone because they didn't want to issue them to LGBT couples, I held a press conference and said, come to Tallahassee. We will marry you where we recognize that love is love. Right? Wasn't popular in the moment, and I'm in North Florida, right? But we did it anyway. When the president and governors came down on Syrian refugees and they said, our governor said that Syrian refugees were not welcomed in the state of Florida, never mind that the governor can't say who is welcomed in a state because immigration is actually a federal issue. Well, he took liberty, so I took liberty. And so I held a press conference and said they're welcomed in Florida's capital city. Why? Because our values matter, y'all. Our values matter. And our values matter not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. That's when we have to stand on what it is that we believe. My pastor kind of puts it in terms of a thermostat versus a thermometer. Y'all are in college, so I trust you know the difference. Y'all know that a thermometer does what? Tells the temperature, right? But a thermostat sets the temperature. And on some of these difficult issues, you all, we have to be willing to stand up and to step out and to sometimes put our political careers or whatever it is at stake for what it is that we believe. For 2 years, the gun lobby drugged me through court. Because in Tallahassee, we had on the books a law that said you can't shoot guns in a city park. Radical. You cannot shoot guns in parks where our kids play and our families picnic. And that was too radical an idea in today's state of Florida, according to the legislature. So they created an opportunity for the gun lobby to take me to court. So for 2 years, in and out of court, in and out of court, in and out of court. Well, the good news is, y'all, we beat them not once, but we beat them twice. At the circuit court and then at the District Court of Appeals that sided with us that we did not have to remove our law off the books, right? But it's not good enough because, quite frankly, that's not even real gun reform. It's not even real gun safety. You all, when you graduate from this institution, I want you to be able to choose the state of Florida as a place that you're going to make your home, that you may start your businesses, that you may begin your careers, right? Where you may innovate, where you may invent, right? But in order for us to do that, we have to build a kind of economy that makes way for you. And right now, we've been a state that's pretty much addicted to tourism. And tourism, I'm not hitting on it. It's going to be a part of Florida. But we should be, quite frankly, as the third largest state in all of America, we should be running it from an economic standpoint. Y'all ought to be creating the businesses and making this state world class. World class is something more than spending the least amount per pupil in the state of Florida for our kids. We should be something better than the state that told 1.5 million of the most medically needy people, good luck on how you find health care. Go figure it out. We should be a state that is setting the example of how to deal with global climate change and sea level rise. There's an economy in that. When President Trump was over deciding that he wanted to be in the company of Bashar al-Assad rather than civilized nations across the world, and when he decided to pull back from the Paris Accord that very same week, y'all, in Tallahassee, I was breaking ground on a 120-acre solar farm because I actually believe that being in the Sunshine State should mean something. Right? We ought to make it count. And I also believe that there is an industry of that. I actually think that there are jobs in that. I think there's a future for this state. And that should we choose to lean into it. We have an opportunity to build high-speed rail in this state. But the governor said that he doesn't take Obama stimulus money. And so he sent back $1.3 billion to Washington, D.C., which got distributed to other states, right? So it's time for us to act like an adult state. But in order to act like an adult state, we got to have adult governors and adult leaders, right? Now you hear this coming from the mouth of a 38-year-old. But I'm a 38-year-old with 15 years of public policy making experience, the most qualified candidate on the Democratic side seeking the nomination for governor. But you can actually dismiss with all of that. Because we also need a candidate who knows what it likes to grow up, to try to live, survive, and thrive in this state. In fact, I think that's a higher recommender than anything I can say to you. I care deeply about the state because I wouldn't be where I am today were it not for loving parents who cared for me. Without a public education system that saw me, that inspired me, that told me I could even when I thought I couldn't. That invested in me and made a way for me. And that very same education system, y'all, is under attack at the hands of the Republican leadership in this state. Y'all do know that the Speaker of the House referred to the teachers of this state as evil. He says that our kids are attending failure factories, right? They pretty much sold out public education to the privately run corporations, right? Whatever happened to the idea that every kid ought to have an opportunity to learn? And that we ought to set the framework for every kid to get access to a good, high-quality education, beginning between the ages of 0 and 5. Where we know that the majority of brain development, over 90%, happens between those very critical years, right? Instead, we choose to test y'all to death. How many of y'all know about testing? You know a lot about testing. And by the way, science tells us that those tests don't actually tell us what you know. It tells us how well you take a test, right? We need to put education back into the hands of the teaching professionals who know how to do it. And so instead of teaching to the test where the social studies teacher is giving up her time to the geometry and the math teacher, because social studies isn't on the test, right? That they're teaching to. And by the way, the test changes every year, right? They come up with a new formulary. So as soon as teachers know how to teach to it, they got to change the method and teach to a new one. It's a wrong system. It's not the system that we should be running this state by. And so I think we have an opportunity to change that. But let me admit to you this, I can't do it without you. That is my most honest and direct thing that I can say to you. I can't do this without you. I can't run this race without you. And guess what else? It's not enough for us to believe in progressive ideals and progressive principles and not be willing to work for it. We have to work for it. I realize that I don't look like I ought to be dreaming about running for governor, let alone doing it, right? Because this state tells us and society tells us what our governor needs to look like, sound like, where they got to come from, right? And I don't have those things. I cannot stroke my own check to become governor of the state of Florida. And I certainly don't come from a famous last name. And so the way we're going to have to do it is by getting out there, going door to door, talking to every single person that we can, and convincing them that we can do this thing and that we can do it together, right? The old-fashioned way. And I know a little bit about that because I've had to do it before. And I know a little bit about being told that I can't do something, because when I ran for city commission, I wasn't supposed to win that either. And now 15 years later, I serve as the mayor of that very same city, right? And so I know that we can do this. I know that we can do it. I want to get to your questions, y'all, but I want you to understand that when I say that we can actually do this, I really do mean it. It's not just a hype me line. All right? It's not, doesn't give me anything, and it may not give you anything unless you understand the context. Young people in this state, young voters in this state in the Democratic primary, y'all represent just 4.8% of the voters in that primary. As it sits today, fewer than 5% of folks between the ages of 18 and 35 are voting in the primary. I believe we can double that number. In fact, I believe we can triple it. I think we can get to 15% of young people in the Democratic Party going out and voting. But we have to make that real, right? And I'm guessing because a lot of us are newer voters or younger voters, many of y'all may not be registered as Democrats. I don't know that, and I'm not going to ask you to show your hands because y'all sitting in a Democratic club meeting. I ain't going to shame you. But in the state of Florida, Democratic primaries and Republican primaries are closed. And what that means, you must be a registered Democrat or a registered Republican in order to participate. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and confess in advance, I actually don't like that system and I don't believe in it. I wish we had open primaries in this state, but we don't have that. I really do. I wish we had it. So while we're working to make that happen, we got to work within the system that we have today. And right now, it requires us to be registered on one side or the other. So if you're not yet registered, I need you to get registered. And if you're not yet registered with the Democratic or the Republican Party, although I'm running in the Democratic primary, I hope you'll get registered over the course of the coming months, because that's how we end up being able to let you vote and allow that vote to count in the primaries. But if we can get beyond the primary, then the last two races for governor in this state were decided by fewer than 1% of the vote. There was a fewer than 1% difference between the winner and the one who didn't win. To put that in hard numbers, y'all, that's